misinterpreting situations. We see this a lot with interpersonal interactions. So let's say someone looks at you funny, or an associate turns something into the partner and they give you no feedback, and the associate thinks, well, I failed. I did a shitty job. They're never going to give me work again. I hear this all the time. We want to come up with a more productive interpretation. That is not helpful. And we have to recognize it is just one interpretation of many possible interpretations of what's going on, but our brain tends to go there, right? We tend to go negative. So that's one, as soon as we recognize it, we can play with it. And then the final one, which is probably the most impactful, is the inner critic. Sometimes we call it the gremlin voice, some version of you are not good enough. And there are lots of great ways we can challenge this. I know a lot of people talk about having a list of your accomplishments that you can always reference and pull out. That can be really important. But I even say just talking back to the message, flip it and reverse it. Why are you good enough? You're a lawyer. Make the argument for me. I always say to my clients, tell me why you're good enough. Tell me why you can make this happen. And just saying the words out loud can shift how you feel and what you actually believe about yourself.
Welcome to the Free Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Gary Miles. The Free Lawyer Podcast is designed for the lawyer, entrepreneur, or professional who is in some way unfulfilled, stressed, or stuck, and is looking for something better. We will discuss various blocks that limit us from achieving the personal freedom that we all desire, but have not yet fully experienced. And we will give actionable steps to free yourself from them. Are you looking to achieve a new level of success? If so, this podcast is for you. Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of The Free Lawyer. And for those who have not listened to our podcast before, I'm here to share thoughts and wisdom with you that may help you enjoy your practice more, may give you helpful tips on how to overcome the stress and frustration that you feel, to turn that stress into success and that frustration into freedom. For those of you who've listened before, thank you for being here today and for supporting the podcast on other occasions. If you like what you hear, I would really appreciate a rating and review. That helps the podcast get heard and seen by more people. And today's is a really special episode. I have Emily Hirsekorn with us. Emily is a simply incredible coach to lawyers and other leaders, and she's here to share her wisdom and insights with us today. Emily, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your kind words.
Oh, absolutely. So Emily, share with us, if you will, your journey from studying positive psychology to becoming a career leadership coach for lawyers.
I'm actually glad that you asked this because I don't think I talk about it enough. I think I tend to dive right into the present, right? And I think it's really important actually for folks to be thinking about positive psychology. So when I was young, I wanted to become a clinical psychologist. I majored in psychology in undergrad, and I actually had the good fortune to do some research with a professor, Rick Snyder, who has since passed, but he was one of these really preeminent guys in the field of positive psychology. And by guys, I really should say psychologists. There's some really, really fabulous women doing the research and work as well. And his baby was hope. So we were doing research on the concept of hope. Hope, we're talking about goals, strategies or pathways to meet your goals, and motivation, which is essentially coaching. So at the time we weren't talking about it. Coaching wasn't as popular. No one put it out there as a field to go into. But we were doing research specifically on the correlation between social support and how much hope folks had. Really, really interesting stuff. I knew I wanted to help people achieve their goals. Took a little sidestep into law and went to law school, practiced for a couple of years. But then when I left, I went into law school career and professional development, which was a huge step in the right direction. And then realized folks need more support. So ultimately came to coaching, came back to that original goal of helping folks achieve their goals and figuring out all of the different hurdles that are getting in their way and how to help them clear those out. But I can tell you at the law school, I was supporting thousands of lawyers and law students really superficially. And as you know, Gary, lawyers need more help than that. There are just so many different things impacting their success.
So explain to me briefly, what is positive psychology and how does it influence how you work with your lawyer clients?
Sure. So, a few important concepts from positive psychology that I use, and frankly, I think most coaches do, whether they realize it or not. One of them is gratitude. And we hear about this a lot, but it is one of those positive emotions that we want to increase. There is a ratio of positive to negative emotions that's really ideal to experience. So, increasing positive emotions usually is a good thing. But what's interesting is a lot of times people hear, just write down 3 things you're grateful for, and that's their gratitude practice. And a lot of people, especially skeptical lawyers, we tend to say, this isn't doing much for me, or it becomes really rote and it loses its meaning. So I like to share with folks the researched gratitude practice that has been proven to increase happiness if you do it at least 2 weeks. It's important to identify events that you're grateful for that happened that day. And also the second step, going a little further, also identifying all of the things and people that helped make those events happen. And then you have this really big and robust gratitude, almost a gratitude spiral, if you will. Wow, not only am I grateful for the nice weather outside today, I'm grateful for the fact that I live in a neighborhood where I can walk my children to school. And I'm grateful for the neighbors who also walk with us to school. And you just keep going and you see just how good things really are outside of us. So that's one concept that's important. Another one is flow. And positive psychologists have defined flow. I'm summing up here, but essentially where you have an equal match of skill and challenge. So something that maybe you enjoy while you're doing it, maybe you don't necessarily enjoy it, but on the other side, you look back and you feel proud and you feel accomplished. And it's really important to increase our flow activities. So for lawyers or any professionals, we want to think about that. When are you in flow at work? I work with a lot of trial lawyers. A lot of them say, when I'm in trial. That is my sweet spot. Great. We want you doing as much of that. And then we can think about limiting those other activities that you just don't enjoy doing or might be draining. Other folks, it might be brief writing. How can we be doing more of that? Or just focusing on the fact that you have this work you really find meaningful. And then we can address the other work that you're doing as well. So flow is another important concept there. The last one, before I get too nerdy and geek out too much on this, because I love this topic, is optimism. And the basic idea here is, of course, a belief that things will work out, a belief that we can do it. So it goes hand in hand with confidence. And Martin Seligman, the founding father of positive psychology, has written the book, Learned Optimism. You can learn this stuff. Okay. So really, really cool for coaches to be helping folks learn optimism, see that they can make things happen. Things can work out when they otherwise feel totally stuck and low energy to where they're worried they don't have options.
Yeah, those are some really, really important concepts. And I know I've been sober in recovery for a while. And for me, gratitude is one of the most important principles of my life. And I've had some stuff going recently that has been a challenge. And I realize I need to focus on what I have to be grateful for instead of thinking of the things that are challenging. And I used to do what I call awfulizing. It was the opposite of optimism. I would always imagine the worst possible result. And that does nothing except create my own self-stress. So to replace that with a positive outlook, and it could be just as little as this will work out okay. That this will work out, even when it seems dark. But it often can be more than that. I'll win the trial. I'll write a good brief. My brief will be well received. It could be something more optimistic than that. And one of the things I've experienced a lot is lawyers struggling with burnout. And I think those lawyers who struggle with burnout struggle with being grateful because they think about all the things that cause them stress, and they don't have an optimistic outlook. What do you see as some of the major warning signs of potential burnout among lawyers? And with your clients, how do you help them overcome that?
Yes, burnout, one of the most common topics we're talking about here, right? And also, I would say when I'm being asked to speak, most common topic people are requesting talks on is burnout. So it is very, very important. Thank you for bringing it up. We're talking about disengagement. A lot of folks want to be more engaged with their work and they're just not feeling it. So going hand in hand with that, lack of motivation, low energy, apathy. And we see the reason I support folks with professional and personal is it all goes hand in hand. So we see folks who are experiencing burnout not only feeling apathetic about work and pulling out of what might seem like elective activities and socializing, but also in their personal life where you just kind of want to stay home and you're not talking to folks as much. I'm not socializing. So we want to pay attention to all of these things. When it comes to addressing it, many ways, definitely personal. So I want to share that caveat up front. But one of my favorite frameworks to use is from iPEC, the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. That was my coach training program. I use a lot of their tools and resources. And iPEC has a framework that is 6 categories of factors that influence your performance. And it's really simple, which I always tell lawyers, I know you're not going to like this because you want things to be hard. You think things have to be hard. But I share it because it's simple. So it's actually really useful. So we're talking about social factors, physical, mental, emotional, environmental, and spiritual. These are the 6 categories of factors that influence how we're showing up at work, how we're performing, how successful we are, how much energy we have. And what we want to do is 2 things: go through all of these different factors and think about stressors. So in these different categories, what is draining you day in and day out? And then also the performance boosters. When you're at your best, what are the circumstances? What's going on? What's going on environmentally? Where are you? How have you prepared? How do you feel physically? And what's going on there so that we can set them up for success. And then I'm sure most coaches take this approach as well. I think what's most important is we go through all of this, but we make small changes. So we choose to chip away or to start something new bit by bit. So let's say it's physical. A lot of folks, there's 2 things. I struggle with it. And a lot of my clients do too. I'd love to hear about your experience. Hydration and then also sleep. 2 things really important most of us struggle with. So, okay, we're setting a little micro goal for the week. I'm going to fill up my giant Stanley the night before and then have it waiting for me at my desk so I can't avoid it. I'm going to drink that whole thing before lunch. Or sleep, setting a bedtime for ourselves. And again, establishing these habits one by one and then building because they all contribute to our energy and overall success. I'm curious to throw it back to you. Does that resonate in terms of those specific examples or other ones that are common?
Those are 2 great examples. I know I used to live on coffee and Diet Coke, and they were my daily beverage. I used to dislike water because it didn't have much flavor, but I've now learned to put a healthy, fruit-flavored, vitamin-laden in my drink. And before I have coffee in the morning, I go out with my wife for about a mile and almost 2-mile walk, and I'll drink 34 ounces of that before I've started my day. So I start off hydrated. And my goal is to drink 3 of them a day, would be 96 ounces, along with my smoothie. I have a smoothie every day. And so I have mostly fluid really until mid-afternoon. And sleep, my Apple Watch tells me at 10:30 it's bedtime. And I'm
Great.
supposed to sleep till 6:30, and that works out pretty well until my 11-year-old English Golden decides at 5:30 she wants to wake me up. So I will get up with her. When I wake up at 5:30, it's too early to go back to sleep. But I think sleep and hydration are really important, and also healthy eating. I think the lawyers who are under stress will sometimes skip a meal
Yeah.
or will eat something fast food. And
Yep.
it would be so much better if they could take a break and eat something fairly healthy that really fuels them, because it's not about how many calories we put in our body, but it's really a matter of the protein and the vitamins and the minerals that give us fuel. If I put bad fuel in my sports car, it's not going to run very well. So I think
Right.
those three things of hydration, healthy eating, and good sleep really can make a difference.
Yeah. Well, and think about movement too. How few attorneys are getting up throughout the day and moving their bodies the way that we're really designed to. I was listening to something the other day and they made such a great point. They were talking about our obsession in America with going to the gym and getting big, right? And they were saying the idea in an ideal world is not you exercise for an hour a day and that's it, and the rest of the day you're sedentary. Ideally, we're moving throughout the day. That's where our bodies are designed. But of course, many lawyers are set up with the work that they have or billable hours on the defense side to sit on our butts behind a computer all day and not move. Right. So I think that's another big one. We just have to throw in there those basics
Right.
that we want to be thinking about and how coaching can support them. We're talking about planning, identifying those kind of problem areas and growth opportunities, and then planning. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to do it? When are we going to make it happen? No more excuses.
And I think along with the exercise during the day, because it's hard when you're sitting at a computer to really get exercise. But I also think it's important that a lawyer who's very, very busy take a break in the morning and a break in the afternoon and a lunch break. Because if you're a high level athlete, the coach calls a timeout so you can get a rest.
Yeah.
But a lawyer can't be expected to work at high energy levels 10 hours a day and not get burned out. And I believe if you take a 10-minute break in the morning and go outside, I live in Pinehurst, North Carolina. It's a glorious day here. Going outside, feeling the sun, feeling the breeze, hearing the birds, recharges you, refreshes you, and gets you moving.
You said something that's really important. You're talking about sports and a coach forcing the athletes to take a break. There's the difference because folks don't have that person in the middle of the day, professionals telling them to take a break. And a lot of people really struggle with holding themselves accountable. It's the same thing with many issues we're talking about and growth opportunities. And I always tell folks, I'm here in the beginning to help hold you accountable. But the real goal is to figure out how you can hold yourself accountable. Manufacture deadlines if you're having trouble putting work off and procrastinating. Create these deadlines in this artificial structure that doesn't otherwise exist that's going to support you when you don't have someone kind of guiding you and structuring your day for you.
Emily, one of the concepts you talk about is career clarity concept. Can you explain to me what that means and how it can help a lawyer to kind of realign their work life?
Yes. So my career confidence code framework has 4 different pillars. This is the first. We're talking about a couple of key things here, but the big idea is value aligned goals. Most people I come across, I feel, do not have goals in place. Okay. So, as well as I do, a lot of lawyers fall into their job. I think there's a public perception that lawyers always wanted to be lawyers. They went to law school, they chose their job, they're in their dream job. That's not the case for most lawyers. And I know this because I was the recent grad advisor at a law school for 7 years. And so I was tracking, I knew exactly how every single person got their job. And a lot of them fall into them. So we want to make sure that people are setting goals for themselves. Number one, let's say someone knows their values, they know who they are, but if they don't have goals, they don't have this direction that they're headed. They may be successful, but we can maximize your success if you're setting yourself up in this direction. Okay. But a lot of people don't even know their core values. When I ask them that, they have no response initially. So I want people thinking about what matters most to them. What is their purpose? What is their why? What gets them up every day? And what motivates them? So we want you to identify your core values, and then we want to set value aligned goals. That's what I'm talking about with clarity. Usually, when people are starting to explore different job or career options, they tend to go to job title. That's where they go. And I say, I don't care what the title is. And there's lots of crazy job titles out there nowadays, right? Like it's not even that helpful anymore sometimes when you're doing a search. So we really want to think about, who are you at your core? What do you need to feel fulfilled? That's valued living right there. And then we can find jobs, careers, or you're staying put, but just where do you want to be in 5 years moving forward, that align with your values and desired lifestyle. Very, very important for fulfillment and engagement at work.
It really is important. I think the trouble is too many lawyers, like you say, fall into their job, or they take the job that is the highest pay or the biggest title and assume that's what they should want. And it looks good, it looks better, but it doesn't align with their values. But they never really thought about what's important to me. Is it independence? Is it autonomy?
Yeah.
Is it what area of law I practice in? Is it who I practice with? Is it how much time I have for family and friends and activities? And such a key concept for all of us to step back, think about what our values are, think about what we want our dream job in law to look like, and then to figure out, with the help of a coach like yourself, how can I get there?
Yeah, I mean, I personally am constantly doing this work, right? You asked me before we got on for this recording, how was my business going? I couldn't even answer that in a few seconds because there's so much to say, because it's evolving so much each and every year. When I think about my values and how I want to live them out, I can map something out. And naturally, the further out our goals are, let's say 12 months, which we tend to think of as long term, the more likely things are going to shift a little bit, right? I cannot predict the future entirely. So new opportunities come to me, and then we need to reassess. Okay, great. Are these aligning with my values, personal and professional, and those business goals? And if there's any sort of rub, what changes can I make? Okay, so just want to emphasize, this is not just for the lost soul, right? Who's been working 10 years and for the first time is like, oh shit, I need to start thinking about these things. All of us on a regular basis can be reevaluating and thinking, what more can I do to be living out my values and honoring who I really am?
One of the things I've seen in talking to lawyers, no matter how talented they are or how successful they are, they struggle with self-doubt. Have you seen that too? And how do you help your lawyer clients manage that self-doubt?
Yes, it's interesting. I think a lot of people, again, this public perception of lawyers from the outside think lawyers are so confident, right? They know everything. They walk into the business room, whatever. And you're absolutely right. A lot of folks are struggling with doubt. I see it happens throughout the career for different reasons. So early on, as you know, lawyers don't know what they're doing when they get into practice after they leave law school. They're not trained so much to practice in law school. So they are constantly doing new things, which is very scary. Lots of imposter syndrome early on when young lawyers are starting to work with actual clients. Very scary stuff. And then mid-career, it happens again. If people are moving into a new job, a lot of lawyers, I think a lot of people don't realize lawyer jobs vary greatly. So changing jobs might mean you're doing something totally different. I know people who switch practice areas mid-career. So that same thing can happen all over again. But also mid-career, we see people moving into leadership roles with very little leadership development. So they don't know what they're doing again, just with respect to a different aspect of their job. They may feel good and confident about the actual substantive work, but now I'm leading a team and don't have much guidance on how to do that. So it comes up again, or maybe they're joining boards for the first time, et cetera. Again, I use an iPEC framework specifically for confidence issues. There are some common internal blocks that a lot of us experience, limiting beliefs, where we have an idea about how we should be doing things or how things are or should be that does not support our goals. Let's say as a woman, I say women don't make it to the top because no one up there looks like me. And then guess what? I don't go for it. I don't try. I'm not as engaged and I'm not going after opportunities. So we want to make sure to challenge those limiting beliefs. How true is that? Maybe it's not true. Maybe there is one woman up there who's that shining example we can lean on. Or even if it's true, what does that mean for you? So again, going back to this example, even if there are no women in leadership, if that's something I truly want, I can say, well, I'll be the trailblazer. I'll be the first. So it doesn't matter and doesn't hold me back anymore. That's one of the common internal blocks. Another one is assumptions based on what's happened in the past. So let's say I want a promotion, I asked for it in the past and didn't get it. So I assume it's going to happen again. Same thing. What's the point of even trying? So again, you see how we can hold ourselves back when we're not feeling so confident based on past events. Again, we want to challenge that just because it happened in the past. So what? Why must it happen again? We want to think about all of the reasons why it could work out. We talked about optimism earlier, invoking our optimism, making excuses, rationalizing. Last time, this must have happened. This time, I've got all of these other credentials and reasons that I could get it. I'm going to go after it. The third one is misinterpreting situations. We see this a lot with interpersonal interactions. So let's say someone looks at you funny, or an associate turns something into the partner and they give you no feedback. And the associate thinks, well, I failed. I did a shitty job. They're never going to give me work again. I hear this all the time. We want to come up with a more productive interpretation. That is not helpful. And we have to recognize it is just one interpretation of many possible interpretations of what's going on, but our brain tends to go there, right? We tend to go negative. So that's one. As soon as we recognize it, we can play with it. And then the final one, which is probably the most impactful, is the inner critic. Sometimes we call it the gremlin voice, some version of you are not good enough. And there are lots of great ways we can challenge this. I know a lot of people talk about having a list of your accomplishments that you can always reference and pull out. That can be really important. But I even say just talking back to the message, flip it and reverse it. Why are you good enough? You're a lawyer. Make the argument for me. I always say to my clients, tell me why you're good enough. Tell me why you can make this happen. And just saying the words out loud can shift how you feel and what you actually believe about yourself.
Those are four really important things. And I know you talked about the past, seeing our past as limiting our future. And I'll bet you have seen this too, but I've seen with my clients, I can see a future for them that is so much bigger and broader and more successful than what they see in themselves. And I think that's often because they look at their past. I haven't done that yet. I haven't succeeded at that yet. I haven't gotten there yet. And so they judge their future based on their past. But I think a coach can help them look at their potential, their skills, their talents, because we've worked with other folks and we've seen how they've changed and grown and been successful. So we have those stories to support our coaching, but in their minds, they're just looking at their past and limiting their future based on their limited past.
Yeah, I tend to tell folks, you're in the weeds, right? I am not in your mind. That's the whole value of having someone as an objective outside thought partner, really. So I completely agree with you here. And I love the idea that you're bringing in these other examples that we all have in mind as coaches. And even without those, I think just to be able to be neutral, and not have the information that the client has about their past enables us to be more hopeful about the future. So I love this partnership you're talking about with coach and client, where you can help folks really see there are different possibilities they didn't even know were available to them.
One of the things that I've talked to a lot of lawyers that they struggle with is finding some balance between their overwhelming work and their personal life. Because they seem to have so many hours they have to bill and so many meetings they have to go to in business development, and they just feel overwhelmed. What can you as a coach do, and what have you been able to do with your clients to help them be productive, be successful, but still have a work life and home life that they enjoy and savor?
This is a really big question we should have an entire program on, because I think there are different ways to do this. And again, it definitely is individual. So one thing I think is really important to acknowledge, which is also why I tell folks it's important to work with a lawyer coach if you're a lawyer, because we get it, is a lot of law jobs are demanding and always will be. And we cannot get around that. I think sometimes in our industry, there's this idea of like design your life and create it and make these small changes at work and have the conversations to ask for what you want and set boundaries. What you want in the ideal may not be available with your current law job. That is reality. Okay. So if you want to be working part-time, let's say, not an option for a lot of law jobs. The reduced hours structure that a lot of the bigger firms are offering now, they're essentially regular hours. Right. So that's just something, again, to keep in mind in terms of what we can do about it. So one, I think it's really important for people to decide, is this what you want? So some people don't. Some people don't want to work long hours. Personally, that was a choice I've made for myself. When I launched my business, I think as most successful entrepreneurs would attest to, it takes a lot up front, right? You have to build, you have to network, you have to do many things in addition to just doing the work if you want a successful business that is going to actually pay your bills. So I used to work very long hours. I worked every night. I worked nights and weekends. For me, that felt necessary. What was important was two things. It was short term. So I knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel. So I had a plan of how things would change. And I've seen this with a lot of lawyers who say, I'm going to put the time in now. I'm willing to do that. And ultimately, I want to figure out how to scale back. Whether that means they will change jobs, whether that means they will not work for a while and have children, or whether that means they want to go to the reduced hours and work regular hours and not these crazy hours. Different ways to do it, but that's something that I think is important to note. Can you put in the energy now, knowing it's short term? If there's a light you can see at the end of the tunnel. Otherwise, I think that there are certainly small changes we can make, just like we were talking about earlier with that framework where we have the different factors that influence our performance and energy. We've got to set aside, even if it's 15 minutes a week, everyone has 15 minutes a week. Set aside some time, and this is again the value of coaching because it's forced on you. Set aside some time to think that stuff through. What are the small changes I can make to feel my best? If I'm not sleeping enough and I know I have to sleep 7 hours a night to function, I have to make that happen. If that feels not doable with this job, I'm going to have to look for another job. Okay, so if that's the case for you, then we might have to have conversations with the people we're working with our team, with HR, with our supervisor. If you are making an effort to get sufficient sleep so that you can function, and you need to scale back on your work because of it, that might be we might need to have a conversation with the office. So I think it's important to start making those small changes. A lot of things when we feel overwhelmed and again approaching burnout feel undoable or unattainable, and that's not reality. So like you were talking about, I was talking to someone the other day saying, oh, I didn't have time to go to the grocery store. And they said, I know you don't like having groceries delivered, but why don't you do that every now and then? And I said, oh my God, I totally forgot that was an option, right? During COVID, that's all we did.
Right.
So again, having a coach to remind you of these little things, having a thought partner, and just sitting down, doing that assessment, brainstorming, planning for even a brief time to make these small changes can make a really big difference. So I think it's the small changes and the bigger assessment. What is your desired lifestyle? And what kind of career and job do you need to make that happen? And then we can figure out how to go from there.
And so many lawyers don't really take the time to answer those questions. What's important to them in their career, and
Yeah.
how can we get there? Let's talk about women in law. Do they face some sort of unique pressures, and how do you help women lawyers and women leaders be both successful and have the home life that they want?
I have to answer this carefully because there are a lot of different dynamics here.
Sure.
One, there is a difference in terms of our bodies and having babies. And I think that people don't talk about that enough. But that's important. That matters. If you are having a baby, you have physical needs that are different. So that is really important to make sure that that's addressed in terms of when you're pregnant, and then also after having a baby, how are you going to make that happen and be able to take care of your family the way that you want to? I think a lot of offices now have nursing rooms, which is wonderful, and companies are having better conversations about this, more paid leave, which is wonderful. But that is a difference that has to be acknowledged. It's biological. So that's number one. Number two, I think an interesting thing that I'm seeing happen, and this might feel a little controversial to put out there, but I feel very passionately about this being an issue, is sometimes when we are sending the message of women's empowerment and encouraging women to go out and do it all and go to the top, I have many clients who say, I don't want to do that, but I feel pressured by society or by someone else or by family. And I just think it's really interesting. And I don't hear people having this conversation publicly, and it really needs to happen. The big idea, we want everyone to have the same opportunities, and we want to be able to support people to do what they want, which means if they want to go to the top, how can we help them get there? If they want to stay home for a certain period of time, how can we help them do that and then return? I know there are a lot of great organizations and programs now for return to work, which is wonderful because that is a hard thing to do after taking some time off, how to ramp up. A friend of mine in the UK has a coaching program that's specifically for women returning to work after maternity leave. Really cool, innovative stuff. Just to give an example. In general, which I think was really more of your question that I'm finally getting to now, but had to get that other stuff out of the way. I do think that we still have some difference in terms of lack of confidence, because naturally, if you're in a room where most people don't look like you, it can feel different. We also see business development happening in a very particular way, where people, buddy up with people like them and they're golfing and things like that. If you don't have those things in common, or that doesn't feel like your style, you can feel stuck and I don't know how to do this. So I do see that coming up in terms of emerging leaders who are looking at partnership and trying to navigate business development and do it their own way. The great news is, as with everything coaching, we're always saying it's got to be unique to you. So we need to figure out what are your strengths, what are your natural preferences and your natural style? How can we play to that? And then any sort of growth opportunities, how can we stretch those a bit to accommodate the particular clients you're going after? Or if you're trying to get into some professional org or particular role, of course, how can we flex a little bit there too? So I think that's always what we're doing, is how can we examining, how can we lean into our strengths, and then also how can we flex in those other areas if that would be helpful to achieve our goals.
Some great thoughts, some great thoughts. And one of the things we've talked about around our discussion today is coaching. And there are a lot of, it is a new concept. I've been practicing for 45 years and there's no such thing as a coach. And I could have certainly, I needed one. But a lot of lawyers are listening to us today who don't know what that means or why they should consider it or how a coach can help them. So briefly, what do you think, for those who are listening, why they should consider using a coach like yourself to find more freedom, to achieve their goals, to get to a level of satisfaction they have not found yet?
Yes. So really, really important to make clear. If you're feeling stuck and unfulfilled, certainly a time to seek out support. I think that's most obvious. But I think it's also really important to note the other time when you're feeling pretty good. Also a great time to use a coach. I love how you brought up sports, really important analogy. I think a lot of very, very professional people, successful people have personal coaches. It's all about being your very best. So I love when a client comes to me and tells me I'm really into personal development. Great. To me, what that means is I want to put in the time and effort to be my best. And at the end of the day, that's what we're here to help you do. Whether you're starting from a place of feeling stuck and unfulfilled, or you're feeling okay, but you want to feel great, or you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to maximize your success. So a few different areas that I support folks with is leadership development. And that could fall into either one of those categories. Lots of leaders are feeling burnt out and totally overwhelmed. And I've got this huge team or small team. People, there's a lot of conflict, just different things going on, lots of dynamics for leaders. Coaching can be really, really helpful to manage all of those. Again, a lot of lawyers getting into these leadership roles who are not getting any sort of training or any sort of development there. So really, really important. Every single leader should have some sort of coach, a sounding board, a thought partner, someone to help them recognize where they can grow. Outside of that particular area is, like we talked about, clarity. So helpful to have someone outside of the weeds of your mind as an objective thought partner to help ask you the right questions to get to who you really are, what you really want, and then set those goals that are meaningful, the right kind of goals, and help you get there. So a lot of us, we mull things around. I'm a verbal processor, if you can't tell. We talk. Coaches will help you stay organized and on track. And in 30 to 60 minutes, however long a session is, move you from one point to another. Whereas if we're just on our own, kind of thinking things through, we might not get there as quickly or efficiently. Also nice to know that you have a support person throughout the process. If you're addressing burnout, if you're boosting your confidence, if you're working on work-life balance. I know a lot of my clients will say, well, I got it done last minute right before our session. Great. That's great. That means accountability is working in this relationship. So to help you start being more accountable for doing those things other than your work. I know you're getting your work done, but we want to make sure you're setting aside a little bit of time each week to do all the other stuff that's important too, to maximize your success.
Well, great thoughts. And I know that I've found that a coach can help in so many ways, understanding your values, supporting, accountability in so many ways. And as you mentioned with sports, we just had the Olympics recently, and every one of those incredible amateur athletes have a coach. They don't learn how to do all those things all by themselves. And
That's right.
sometimes we lawyers think we have all the answers. And it's a sign of strength to reach out to someone for support and encouragement. Emily, I really appreciate your being here today. You have so many incredible insights. For those who are listening, who would like to get in touch with you and maybe talk about how you can help and serve them, what's the best way for them to find you?
LinkedIn is the best way. I'm also on Instagram, but find me on LinkedIn. And then also my website goes into detail, a little bit more about me, about the services that I offer. And you can book a call if you want to explore and have a conversation. My website is hirsekorncoaching.com.
Great. Emily, thank you so much. I really appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If any of you have any suggestions for future episodes, reach out to me at gary@garymiles.net. I thank you very much for being here. And as always, please be well, be safe, and be free. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Free Lawyer Podcast. Wherever you are listening, if you enjoyed what I shared, please leave me a rating and review. I would appreciate hearing more about what you like best and what topics you might like me to cover in future episodes. If you are interested in experiencing a more fulfilling and a more successful life, please contact me at www.garymiles.net, where you can schedule a free discovery call with me so I can learn more about you, your challenges, and your dreams. I appreciate each and every one of you, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks to all of you for your support.